Welcome to the TDCC Community Live webinar. TDCC stands for the Developing Child Center,
located in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates.
Established in 2012. We have been providing personalized support to over 1,000 children. We have 60 dedicated and committed experts, and we work closely with parents and schools to ensure no child is left behind. We think different, we teach different. We empower, not limit children. Labels like autism, dyslexia, and ADHD are not relevant or perceived as disabilities, difficulties, or disorders that limit children's abilities. We believe that brilliance needs difference. The TDCC services are available in English, French, and Arabic. The inclusive educational services nurture and support the developmental and educational needs and help empower each child to reach their full potential. Occupational therapy assists children in performing and achieving important learning and developmental skills they need in life. Psychomotor therapy is a healthcare profession that is based on a holistic view of the person and is involved in the treatment of different disorders. Speech and language therapy assists children who have disorders of speech, language, communication, and swallowing. Psychology provides both educational and clinical services, including counseling and parenting. ABA therapy focuses on improving specific behaviors. It is commonly practiced as a therapeutic intervention for individuals with autism. Specialist learning support. We assist in developing the academic and social development of students who need support in all these areas. And we design and host local and international training and workshops for practitioners, parents, caregivers, and educators. Just like this one today. We have a few rules to follow during the webinar. Please remain muted while the speaker is presenting. Please give your full attention to the presentation. We will be sending you the replay, so you can review it anytime. Please be interactive if the speaker requests your participation.
Welcome to our webinar on the importance of neuroaffirmative practices in speech therapy. Our speaker today comes with an extensive background and deep expertise in her field. With a master's in audiology and speech-language pathology, along with certifications in ADUS 2, CERTS 1, the Hanan program, and as an AVAS certified AAC professional. She stands at the forefront of advancements in speech and communication therapy. With over 8 years of experience, she has deeply engaged in autism spectrum disorders, speech sound disorders, and early childhood interventions. Her expertise also spans voice and stuttering disorders, as well as the expansive field of augmentative and alternative communication. Please join me in welcoming our esteemed AAC specialist, Vilahashini Manivannan.
Hello everyone, nice to meet you all on another webinar this year. I'm going to just be sharing my presentation now. I hope we are all excited to do something new today. We're going to be learning a lot of new things. Okay, is it visible to everyone? Is my presentation visible?
Yes. Yes, I can see from my side. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mylin. Okay, so today we are going to be learning about the importance of neuroaffirmative practices in speech and language therapy. So this is a topic that recently has been very popular and also is of interest to a lot of people in our field. So this is going to be really interesting. I hope we all get to take away a lot of learning today. So going in. Okay, first the overview of the presentation is, first we're going to be seeing about what is neurodiversity, then what what it's like to be neuroaffirming, like what the term means. And we're going to be delving into the principles and the approaches, and finally understanding what it's like to make the shift to be neuroaffirmative and integrate that into your therapy. So first, we are seeing what is neurodiversity. So this basically just describes the idea that people experience different things, and we are all different people. We all have different brains. We are all not thinking the same thing about a topic. We're not, we don't have the same views on different topics, and we interact with the world in very different ways. So there's no one right way of thinking. This is what neurodiversity and the term behind encourages, that these are all differences and these are not deficits. So neurodivergent means individuals who have these differences in mental or neurological functions. In the common conditions that this comes under is autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, and also acquired neurodivergence such as traumatic brain injury. So this is what the concept of neurodiversity and then neurodivergence revolves around. In fact, it's about 15 to 20% of the whole population in the world are neurodivergent. So now we're going to be learning some terminologies because this helps us become more aware whenever we are talking about neurodiversity and neuroaffirmative practices. So first is neurotypical. Neurotypical is basically us, people who are the dominant part of the society. We are our neurological development and functioning is considered to be within societal norms. We are the dominant people. So if this is what we think, so we are the typical people, and neurodiverse people are the people who have the differences. And masking. So masking is a terminology where neurodivergent people have to sort of suppress or mask their personalities, their autistic persona, and they have to hide it so that they can fit in with the society. This is what is related to masking. For example, when they try to suppress their stimming so that they would not be considered a misfit within the society. And if they are expected to give eye contact and they have to maintain the eye contact with some people. These are some behaviors or personalities that people with autism sometimes try to adapt so that they would not be seen differently among other individuals in the society. So that's masking. And then the double empathy problem is when people with different experiences of the world interact. Basically, when a neurotypical individual, like two people who are neurotypical, interact, we understand our views, we understand why certain things work that way, why we feel that way, or why we do what we do. But then when a neurotypical person interacts with a neurodivergent person, there is a breakdown of communication there because both of us see the world differently and we interact with it in different ways. Almost like how we think, oh, why is this person stimming a lot? And the neurodivergent person is thinking, why aren't they stimming a lot? So this is our difference, and this becomes a double empathy problem where we are not able to put ourselves in the shoes of one another because we don't relate with one another that way. Right? So these are some of the terminologies that come under neurodiversity. So what does it mean to be neuroaffirming, right? So before we go into the principles of it, before we go into the approaches of it, it really goes into our mindset and how we have learned a lot of things along the way. And then I'm so sorry. Yes. So how we learn our things along the way. So how we change this mindset and what we're gonna do to partake in shifting our perspective is what it means to be neuroaffirming. So this starts with questioning. Basically, we have to question ourselves on what we're doing, on how we're interacting. Are we doing this any better? So, whenever I am taking therapy, I am asking myself these questions all the time to make sure that I am not in any way doing something that's disrespectful. So even if I'm a kid with, I'm sorry, even if I work with kids and, everybody feels like, oh, we're working with kids, they have their own autonomy, they have their own individuality. So I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of their choices and I respect their preferences. And I want to be sure that I'm listening to what they're saying, even if it's not through oral communication, that I am paying attention to their gestures, to what they're looking at, to what their body language tells me. So, all these are signs that are ways of communication that a neurodivergent person communicates us with, and we should do better to always pay attention to that. And we should also be thinking, can we do this better this way? Is there a better way to do this? Or are we being rigid in a way we're not trying to change any activity? So these are all thoughts that will take you to your approach eventually and help you practice what you practice the principles that we're learning, right? So this is what mainly matters before you go into the approach, is to allow yourself to have an adaptive mindset that is constantly questioning things that were taught, constantly focusing on new learnings and building new interests. So that's how we can get there. So now we're going to be seeing about the neuro-affirming principles. So these are some of the principles that are important. There's a lot more that we have. So the first one is advocate, validate, and accept autistic and neurodivergent voices, meaning that whenever when we're talking about expertise in autism, we're always talking about, oh, this person is a autism expert or this person is an ADHD expert. There's no person who is an expert rather than the autistic person themselves. They are their own persons. They are the experts and they know what they're feeling. They know what they want to communicate. They have an idea of who they are. So whenever we are learning or questioning something, we should always make sure to understand if this is coming from an autistic person or is it coming from a neurotypical person, because they have a better idea of who they are, right? So we should always validate their voices and accept what they are talking to us and telling us about themselves, because a lot of the work that's being done recently involves autistic people and their input into the research. So we should make sure of that. So the second is using strength-based approaches. Strength-based approaches, of course, is just like we're going to be talking about this in detail later on, but then it's basically not using their deficits, but rather playing on their strengths and focusing on what they can do or what they have a potential to achieve, rather than focusing on what they cannot do. Oh, they cannot do this or they cannot do that. So we're not here to say what they cannot do, but we're here to figure out what they can. So using those kind of approaches would help autistic people progress further. And then the third is advocate and train autistic acceptance, meaning this revolves around everything like their perspectives, their communication, because their way of thinking and living in this world are completely different than how we engage with it. So whenever we play, even when we are playing a very simple game with our kids, we should always look to see what they like the best. If if we are able to connect with them in that way, then we have already connected with them. They already want to talk to you about it, right? So when we try to interfere and we are trying to change the way they're engaging with an object, then it's sort of like us making them do what we want to do and not really what they want to do. Unless, of course, it's harmful, but in most cases, it's just a difference. And they like to line up toys, or they like to open and close something a lot of times repetitively. We should figure out ways to help them understand how they can bring that into a play. And that's what we need to do to encourage that. And then we focus on self-advocacy, boundaries, consent, and acceptance of authenticity. So these things revolve around teaching kids how to have boundaries with themselves, for themselves, because this is what our therapy should focus on. So, and what we're aiming for. Like whenever we're talking about functional communication, it's not just related to I want this, or I want food, or I need to go to toilet. It's a lot more. It's also about don't come into my space. It's also about don't come into don't take my toys, or I don't want to do that now. It's also about all of these things. So this is what the principles of neurodiversity are. And now we are going to move into the approaches itself. So when we're looking at a closer look of this approach, we're going to be seeing more of this. So first we'll see the traditional approach. Traditional approach is basically aligning an individual's abilities with established norms. This means this is basically what we've been taught as SLPs or speech therapists, or even as a society. It's what we're taught, that there's a way to do things, and that's what we have to make them do. For example, even when we are doing an assessment, or we are having a milestone that we're checking, a speech milestone, because everybody has milestone data these days on Google. So when we see milestones, we should always remember that these milestones are figured out based on normative standards of neurotypical people. So for example, if you have a milestone that says at 1.5 years my child should speak 50 words. So if my child is not speaking 50 words, or if they're speaking 40 or 30 words, does that mean that they're delayed? No. Or have we made an attempt to figure out if they're communicating it differently? Are they pointing to a visual? Are they good in gesturing things, signing things? So we have to take into account all forms of their communication. That's when we can figure out what we can work with the child, or what we can where the kid stands in their communication. This is pretty difficult right now with the current scenario, because we do use a lot of assessment based on data that's taken from neurotypical kids. So So then we also have to see about documenting based on, oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. So next, documenting based on deficit-oriented areas. So for this, I'm just going to take an example from my professor when we were doing the assessments and everything and learning in bachelor's. Is that whenever we do an assessment, we always write down like, oh, the child cannot do this, or they are not doing this. They cannot label these objects. They cannot maintain eye contact. They cannot greet this person, right? So one of the questions that my professor used to always have was, so what can they do? What can your child do? What are they interested in? Or is there something that you see a potential where they can get to? That's what we should do in our assessments, or even in our documentations. We have to figure out the potential that the child has and help them hone on that potential and achieve that goal. So if we are just writing the cans, then it's almost like just saying, okay, are they not doing anything? So these are some questions that we have to ask ourselves. And we are also going to be seeing this through this graph. So this graph explains it very well, where if you see the inner circle, it says what the child can do independently. And then the outer circle is what the child cannot do. So when you see when you see the middle one, the middle circle is where we should target. So the middle circle is they have an interest, they're not fully there yet, they have not achieved that goal yet, but there's potential to do that. These are things that will help us figure out the strengths of a kid and what they can achieve while we're working on with them. So this is something that we have to keep in mind while we are documenting, and also not focusing on oral communication like speech entirely, and giving the child an option to communicate differently using different ways of communication like an AAC app or visuals or sign language. So we have to figure out. So these are the traditional approach where we use the normative standards and deficit oriented. So these are all that comes under the traditional approach. So how are we gonna do the strengths-based approach? So the neurodiversity affirming approach is very centered on the individuals, just like we had discussed before, and it utilizes what they are preferring, their preferences, what matters to them, what matters. What they want to communicate to us, or what kind of play do they like, right? So this is what the neuro-affirmative approach centers around. So if you see support individual communication and play styles like we discussed, so it's going to be, do they have a liking towards iPad? Then we can introduce them to an AAC app. And there's so many AAC app these days, so it can be useful to them to help them communicate. Maybe it will help them to understand the words visually and they're all in one place. So that could be an approach that we can work on with them. And then choosing functional relevant goals. And also, while we're talking about functional goals, it should be relevant to what they want. It's not just, what we think is relevant, but what is relevant to them. So for this, we really have to observe the kids and understand what they need. Is your child someone who likes their space? Then just advocating for themselves to have that space is a great functional goal. Is your child someone who doesn't like it when someone says something? Then it can be a goal for them to ask them to stop saying that. So these are all functional goals too. And it's not just about I want or I need or do this or more. So all your functional goals should be relevant to the particular individual as well. Next is promoting self-advocacy. Self-advocacy is basically like what the kid wants to advocate for themselves, right? Just like how we talk about functional goals. Do they have personal boundaries that we shouldn't cross? Do they have some things that they don't like? So these are goals that will encourage a lot of independence from the kids, and it will help them once they learn how to communicate by advocating for themselves. They will grow to be strong, independent learners, right? And this is what we want from our kids too. And next is using client's interest. We always should prefer the client's interest and what the child likes. And we are going to be looking into the goals sooner, but then just to talk about it, whenever we are writing IEP goals, we write preferred activity, non-preferred activity. Non-preferred activity does not have to be a goal at all, because simply I don't do anything that I don't prefer, right? I am an individual, I'm an adult. I don't like to do things that people tell me just because I have to do, I don't have to do it. So the same way, the child doesn't have to do a non-preferred activity. what could be the goal there is to help the child identify their interests or build new interests or develop interest in a wide range of activities, or spend time learning how else could they play the same game. These are the kind of goals that we should be writing, and not writing or a non-familiar activity should be engaged, because that's basically saying they're just going to have to do the task that they don't really like. So it's not about the task getting done, it's about the child's interest, and that's where our focus should be. So now we're going to talk about some goals. I just have two goals, and we will see how the goal looks in a traditional sense and how it looks in a neuroaffirming sense. So I would like you all to participate on this. Y'all can read this traditional goal and tell me if there is a better way to write it, or if you feel like there is something that should not be there. So the traditional goal says student will greet all peers and adults encountered while establishing and maintaining eye contact and saying hi to a variety of peers and adults across at least 3 different environments. So is there something that you think can be written differently here? You can share it in the chat box. Okay, eye contact. That is true. And then we can replace eye contact. Yes, you're both right. Yes, I'm so sorry. I'm going to share this again. Can you see it now? We can mention students will try to. Okay, that's a good suggestion. And hi to, okay. Precise the peers or adults of his interest. Okay, that's good. Yeah, we won't expect him to greet someone he doesn't want to communicate with. That's perfect. Don't need to specify number of environment. That's true too. We don't have to have number of environment. They're not going to say hi. Exactly. That's perfect, Dr. Amina. Yes. So I think we've got a lot of responses, and all of you, what you said was right. They don't have to have the eye contact. The maintaining eye contact is gone. Eye contact goals are outdated. Firstly, because if I don't feel like looking at a person, we don't have to do that. There's a lot of sensory needs that's going on there too. The child can be overwhelmed. And there is also, I mean, we have introverts. I don't always have eye contact, great eye contact when I'm talking to individuals too. So that doesn't have to be a goal. And then students will greet all peers and adults encountered can be very overwhelming for a child too. They don't have to do for all peers. They don't have to do even for some peers. They can just say hi when they want to someone they like. And to a variety of peers and adults across 3 different environments. It doesn't have to be 3 different environments as well, because saying hi has nothing to do with environments. If I like you, I'm going to say hi, right? So basically, what can be the goal here is now we're going to see it in a neuroaffirmative way. With fading support and access to AAC, well, the child will identify personal areas for self-advocacy and then identify strategies for communicating and expressing needs, wants, asking for clarification, explanation, or need for an example to be presented with. So to summarize, to make it short, basically, this is something related to self-advocacy, because it's like whenever they want to communicate, they should be able to. That's what our goal should be always with therapy. That's what functional is. So If a child wants to talk to you and they're not able to say hi, that's where we are coming in, and we're going to try to help them and give them the different access to a lot of the communication tools. We're modeling signs, we're modeling AAC, we're modeling speech, and the child will learn from you, okay, that when I want to say hi, I can use all these modes or whichever one I'm comfortable with. So this is what we want kids to achieve. So you can choose to fade support, meaning that you can do less modeling, and that's fine. But it doesn't have to be so rigid where we're talking about eye contact or a variety of peers or adults. No, they can have best friends in class, and if they learn to just talk to their one best friend and engage with them and play with them, and they're able to do that, that's perfect. And I mean, when I go to class too, I'm not going to talk to all of my friends. I just have a few best friends who I can relate with. It's just about helping the child to communicate when they want to do that. So that's about this goal. So now we're going to look into this. So using deprivation reinforcement. Basically, deprivation reinforcement is when you hold back some things that the kid likes, and then you will give it to them only when they ask or only when they do something that you want. So using deprivation reinforcement and hand-over-hand prompting or prompting from a second adult from behind child will express desire for food using peck signs or words. Child will express desire for activity using peck signs or words. Can you guys let me know what you think is wrong with these goals? Sounds like punishing. Yes, it does sound like punishing. Especially the hand over hand prompting. Is there anything else that we will modify? Only having access to desired foods and do objects when therapists. Can you tell me again? Only having access to desired foods. So you want to have only the foods that they like. So you're trying to limit the number of food. Okay. This seems to be reward-like goal. You'll get what you like only when you do what you want to do. Yeah, it's very tied to the reward. That's true. No. Oh, okay. Unlimited. Oh, give more options. You want to give more options. Okay, I got it. Need to follow their lead with communication styles and build upon what they already have, use, prefer. Yes, that's true. That's what we gotta do. So just to the mode of communication is limited. Yes, the mode of communication is limited. They just have signs, words, and PECs. PECs is not exactly the best form of communication because it's mainly just designed around requesting. It does not encourage other communicative functions. So basically, if we can, now I'm just gonna talk about this deprivation reinforcement is, it's when you're, it's not actually communication, it's a task, right? Because it says like, if you do this you get this, right? So they're not actually communicating, they're not learning to say the word meaningfully, or they don't want to talk to you, they just want their desired item, so they will do whatever it takes to that, right? So we're not working on communication where it's just basically an instruction that's being followed. It's just a verbal instruction, you follow this, you get this. So it's kind of very like someone said, punishment. It's a punishment for a child, right? It's like you hold something and then you teach them, like, if you don't get this, you will not get this. That's not a way that we should be encouraging kids to communicate from, because then they just learn to be dependent on all these prompts, and they will never understand that, okay, uh, they want me to communicate, is that what they want from me? No, they're just learning that, okay, if I want this, I should do this task, right? And that's not very supportive, and it's definitely, it is a punishment, because it's like, okay, just follow the instruction. Where is their individuality? Where is their personal autonomy? They will not learn to be independent if we are there to prompt them all the time. The hand over hand prompting is an absolute no no, because the child, especially like in speech therapy, whenever we are prompting the kids, they become very dependent on them. That's why it's always best to model, and model the scenario the words are used, model the signs, model the visuals in AAC apps. Because once you do that and you give them that time, the child will understand the context of the words being used. Then they will understand, okay, so this is what mama says every time she gives me a banana, so maybe I should say this. That makes a lot more sense for the child than to just say this word while you're doing this, say this word while you're doing this. It's just a task then, right? So the child will not understand that, oh, I'm expected to, or I'm communicating here. It's just I'm saying the word that doesn't mean anything to me, right? So this is what this means. So the neuroaffirmative way of seeing this is using a total communication approach with all kinds of communication: spoken, core language AAC, signs, gestures, behavior, therapist modeling. This is what will help the child understand and communicate meaningfully and develop the connection with the person that they're communicating with. Uh, Also, whenever we are writing goals, it's always a lot about requesting. The children want to do more than that. We should never limit them to just requesting. Like requesting, requesting, requesting. What about other things? What about if they want to say, that's a bus? Or like, he's angry. What about all those kind of comments or protests or asking questions? We always kind of think that requesting is what my child needs to do first. No, but that's not true. They can do all these things. They can ask questions, they can have opinions, they can say, no, I don't want this, because all these functions are also part of functional communication. Just requesting is not functional. All these things are very relevant. It will definitely help them advocate for themselves better. So, whenever we are writing a functional communication goal, we have to remember that all these are functions too. And it's not just limited to requesting. So, those are some detailed goals that we saw. So, supporting total communication. So, what is total communication? It's when you're looking at all ways a child is trying to communicate. One of the most commonly missed ways is body language and gestures that we often miss. But when you can just pay attention to the child and see their face, see their body language, they will tell you what they want. If a child pushes you away, they need their space. That is communication. If the child nods their head, if they shake their head, that's communication too, and that definitely should be acknowledged. You can model side by side by using a sign, you can use an AAC app, but it's always good to acknowledge them so that they feel reinforced to communicate with you using the same way again. Many neurodivergent adults explain, although they can be functionally verbal, at times they still use and require access to AAC. This is something that's very important too. Whenever we are talking about AAC, we're always saying alternative. The augmentative is the first word. It's like even when they are verbal, they might still need an access to another communication system so that it helps them when they are not able to retrieve their words, because speech can be very challenging and at times confrontational to neurodivergent individuals. So it's always good to have an AAC system in place so that it's giving them the learning that they want. Many autistic people are also Gestalt language processors. They acquire speech by first imitating previously heard phrases and then moving through stages until they're producing novel utterances. So Gestalt language processor is basically when the child has echolalia, what we call as echolalia. They learn sentences and they repeat them, but they're most often in proper context, right? And then they learn to break down the sentences and then achieve the grammar through different stages. And these are also things that we should be aware of. And while we're working on AAC, the most important principle is that we presume competence. We understand that they can learn, they have something to say. One of the most common difficulties or questions that parents ask me is, will my child be able to, you're giving a 77 word grid, there's like so many buttons, are they going to get confused? Are they going to not point? They won't be able to point all these words. So I have a very small video for you of how kids can point the stuff when they want to. Yeah, so this is a very small video because this is something all the kids' favorites is the YouTube icon and the TikTok icon that they always keep choosing on my iPad. Is that there are so many icons there. In fact, they are very small compared to the icons in the AAC app. But he's still able to navigate it and choose the icon. And this is a kid who has never used AAC before, does not use it till now, but still is able to scroll and navigate. So I'm sure that this would not be a hindrance for the kids. It's just how we approach and how we estimate our kids that they are capable of learning this. And once we give them that acknowledgement, then they will slowly get there. We just have to presume that they're able to have that competence to achieve that goal. So now we're going to talk about the languages that and labels that SLPs or even people who are working with neurodivergent individuals on a daily basis should move on from. First one is use your words. This is a term that I don't associate with at all anymore. Saying use your words does not make any sense at all to me, especially when I'm talking something and I cannot recollect something when I'm in a presentation and someone says, oh, use your words. Like, no, I forgot it. So how will I know how to retrieve it? Right? So the best thing is to do at that time is to model. Tell the kids what you want them to say in case they are not able to express their angry, like, oh, are you angry? I can see that you're angry. So these things reinforce and acknowledge what they're trying to communicate. But if you're not able to understand what they want, give them options. Is this what you want? Is this what you want? Try to do problem solving with them and figure out the solution. And once you do that, they understand, okay, this adult is trying to help me. And that's how you build that relationship with your kid and you build that trust with them. So the more we do that, they understand, and then they will learn your language, and then all this falls into place. So we're not going to use your words anymore. Next is the labels that we use a lot of the times: high functioning and low functioning. High functioning and low functioning are very old labels. We are not using that, where it just means like, oh, these people don't function this well, these people function very well. That's very outdated term. So what terms that we use today is high support and low support. So this child requires a lot more support than this child. This is very affirming to an individual and very respectful to their autonomy too. And person first language, individuals with autism is not being used anymore because autistic people have come out and said that they're proud of their identity. So we are going to use autistic person. This is a language that is affirming to them, and we should be taking the guidance from autistic people. And when they feel like this is the right way to address them, so this is what we will stick to. And embracing autistic play. And the play is usually when we're playing with kids, we can always see that they have their own ways of playing. They like to play alone all the time, or most of the time. They may engage in activities that are repetitive, closing the doors, opening the doors, lining up objects, repeating the phrase from TV. And they may seem unaware of other children, wandering through a group while they're standing in line. Even while they are surrounded by a lot of kids, they are still unaware of what they're doing or who is around me, right? So these are something that we observe. So what they engage in is that they engage in activities that only helps them regulate themselves and stimulate themselves, right? So this is interesting for me. This is what I like to do. I don't really mind about the other person because I don't know about the other person. I don't want to engage with the other person. So what can I do to engage with the other person, right? So this is what we want to teach the kids. It's like not make them both talk to each other or play with each other in a forced manner, but then for them to understand that, okay, there are other people around me, and some of them are doing things that is of interest or of no interest. Maybe if I like something, I want to go do the same thing with them. This is what we want to bring out from the kids. And how can they engage in play? Parallel play is a great way for autistic kids to play with each other, because it's like two kids are doing the same activity in a similar space, but they're both doing it by themselves and engaging in it by themselves. So this will help them understand that, okay, they're doing their own thing, I'm doing my own thing. This helps me with my boundaries, with my space, and if I need to, I can ask them for something. So this is what parallel play is about, and it's really, really helpful when a child is still learning and exploring a lot of the activities that we're working on. And yeah, so for example, this is an example of parallel play. The child stacks story blocks to a building, and then there's another child that's uh, taking the blocks from a pile. So both of them are doing two different things, but they're using the same blocks. They're not interfering with each other, but they're doing their own thing. So, and we also use child-led play. We always encourage to use follow their lead and see what they like the best and see how they engage with it. Because as adults, if we want to try and interact with kids, the first step is to understand what they like and what they want to do. If they take a car, they might not just drive it like this. They might put it on the wall, they might ride it, and it's okay if they ride it on the wall. We can join them. It's not the best thing to just take it, oh no, you should write it only on the table. You cannot do it. As long as you know it's not making marks or anything, it's still fine to write it like that. Or if they want to ride the car upside down, then that's fine too. So when you join them in their own interest, that's when we start to connect with kids, and that's what will help them communicate as well. So we always have to observe, wait, and listen. So whenever we are working on the goals as well, we should always emphasize connection. That's the number one thing. Connection over goals. Goals will achieve when there is connection. But if you don't have connection, we're not going to achieve the goals at all. Autonomy is if we're respecting their choices, they should have complete freedom on what they want to do and what they don't want to do, as long as it's not harmful for them. And then encouraging, advocating for themselves is to talk about their personal boundaries. And then floor time. Floor time is a great way to encourage kids to play with. Most of the time, they don't want to do tabletop, and it's okay. We can take them to the floor, have a mat, and set it up and play and get messy if that's what they want to do. No eye contact goals, as we discussed before, and preferred tasks. Always we use preferred tasks, no non-preferred tasks. So making this shift, this whole shift from the traditional to this approach is not easy. And as a therapist, I've learned a lot, and it's taken me a lot to unlearn what I have been taught and to move on move on to listening to autistic voices and accepting that. So the shift towards neurodiversity affirming practices, though, is based on the contemporary understanding and how we can have client-centered care. This also is very inclusive and respectful approach to therapy that acknowledges and celebrates everybody. But the neurodiversity movement itself had started in 1990. The movement is to shine light on individuals that they can be creative, they can have strengths, as opposed to the stigma that was held back then. That's when it all started. Everybody has strengths and everybody has things that they're working on. This is what it was based on. For example, like monotropism, usually this is called as hyperfixation in autism, but monotropism is a term where there is a strong focus for a child on a very particular activity, and it helps them stimulate themselves, it helps them calm down. So that is what is called monotropism. And using that interest, we can work on a lot of things. A lot of the times, the therapist is like, they like this so much, I'm going to hold this as a reinforcement. No, don't hold it as a reinforcement. Work with it and see what else you can do with the same objects, what else the child would like to explore with the same objects. That's when we can get more communication or connection from the kid. In fact, recently, dyslexic thinking is officially recognized as a valuable skill. So we're not very far away from a lot of the autistic traits being acknowledged by very relevant platforms as well. So this is just a recent one that it shows that people are choosing to acknowledge neurodivergent individuals to an extent that this is officially recognized as a skill, just like anything else on a great platform. So let's embrace neurodiversity and keep advocating for acceptance. And this is all I wanted to share. That's about my presentation for today. I will take any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Vila. Yeah, thank you for a very interesting and informative topic. So now we move on to the question and answer part. May we request everyone to please write your questions in the chat box. If there's anyone who would like to ask Vila, or maybe we can start Vila answering some questions from
Sure.
registrants, yeah? Because they sent a lot of questions. I
We
stuff,
did.
yeah?
We did receive a lot of questions. So one of the questions I received was, how do we know when to start using AAC, or when do we start seeing the neurodiverse differences when Vila, could you please summarize one last time? Yes. So I will do that. So when do we start using AAC? AAC can be introduced anytime. It was introduced even to kids who are 1.5 years old. If there's no limits to using it. It can be used with neurodivergent individuals, anyone who would prefer that way of communication. That's what we wanted to highlight over there. And to answer Dr. Amina, so neuroaffirmative approach in general is basically like giving voice to the autistic individual's autonomy. We have to respect their preferences, and then having acceptance towards them in the sessions, acknowledging their boundaries and their communication style, and anything that is going to be affirming to them as a personality, and while acknowledging their differences is what neuroaffirmative approaches. Basically, it's like understanding that, okay, if the child wants to do this right now, we're gonna give them that break and have them that pace to catch up with us. Or if we're using AAC instead of speaking. So that's a neuroaffirmative approach too. And acknowledging, you got it? All right. Is there any other questions that we would like to be answered? PEX is picture exchange communication system. It's like using these visuals to exchange, like if I give them something, they give me a request card because they want it. So it's just like exchanging, and it has like 6 stages of requesting. But yeah, it's not really current right now because we have a lot of other communication modes. Suggest activities, alphabet puzzles. Use alphabet puzzles all the time. Use alphabet puzzles, do alphabets with Play-Doh, stick alphabets on the wall, make alphabet world for them, and then talk about what each alphabet could mean. Oh, I think A could be an apple, and then you can talk about all those things. And you can even have alphabet puzzle like to string it. You can do that, or you can have floor mats with alphabets and do jump from each alphabet. So there's very creative ways that we can work on just alphabets. That's actually great. It even tells you that the child is interested in reading. Do we have any more questions? I'm glad you enjoyed the IEP goals. It really puts it into perspective, I think, what we're doing wrong. Stimming, stimming means it's like anything that is stimulating for an autistic person. They do it a lot of times to help them regulate themselves. Like for example, I mean, even we stim a lot. We, have a pen and we like do this like this, we can move it. Or if it can be that a child likes to see something that's rotating, they like to see things in a certain way. So all that could be stimming. Even there's verbal stimming where the kid is saying some of the words a lot more times than usual. The child prefers sign language and refuse to use words to communicate. What can we do to encourage? If a child prefers sign language, then I think we should encourage sign language, right? I don't think we should force verbal communication on them. If you want, you can model words like spoken words, speech, along with sign language. But if that's their preferred mode of communication, then we should encourage that, even if they are not deaf. Even if they're not deaf, they still have the right to choose how they want to communicate. What challenges do SLPs face when implementing affirmative practice? Is there a risk of being manipulated by the child? No, there is no risk of being manipulated by the child. Um, the challenges that I really face is basically just moving away from what I have learned, and trying to really understand the child, because it's hard, because in your you are taught so many times this is how you should do. You should sit in a tabletop and do the activity here. You cannot move away from it. You cannot take breaks. Only when you finish this you have to take breaks, and those are not affirming to the kid. And you're not manipulated by the child, because the child is a child. Any child will manipulate you, right? So why should we just focus on autistic kids? What approaches would you recommend in speech therapy for a child who speaks comfortably with peers and family but struggles to communicate with teachers? We have to first figure out why they won't communicate with teachers. Is there something that's bothering them there? Is a particular teacher's way of communicating is not okay for the child? Is there any gap that's there between? So there is a lot of things going on there. If especially if they're comfortable with peers and family, then they just wouldn't communicate with the teachers. Then it could be a problem with the environment or class. So I think talking about it with the kids and that could help. It could help, like, have a chat with your kid and talk to them about, I like this about your teacher, is there something you would like? I don't like this about this person, is there something you don't like? That will help them understand and uh, communicate for you. But if we encourage sign language, won't that cause delay? No, sign language is a language of its own, right? It has a very extensive vocabulary. The American Sign Language is recognized as any language in the world, like English or Arabic or French. The sign language has extensive vocabulary. It just doesn't have some limited vocabulary. It has a word for the sign for every word. So there is no delay in the vocabulary at all. No, you can teach multiple vocabulary just using signs itself. How can you change a wrong perspective or understanding of a student with autism? It really depends on context. I would need more information before I can answer that. If it's a wrong perspective, there's always ways of talking to them and showing them examples, giving them examples, and having them understand or figure out if this is a way I can think, or I can think about this. So we help them take perspectives, just like how we are taking perspectives and trying to understand them, right? So you have to help them. Okay, this person thinks like this person thinks like this. So then they will understand, okay, there's multiple perspectives that people take, and this is something I have. Maybe I can think like this. That would be a way of taking perspective. No worries. Is there any other questions that we have?
Bila, I think that's all we have
Yeah, that's all.
today for the
For
question
sure.
and answer. So we'll be sending the replay to all the participants. Much, Vila. Thank you. This is your third webinar
Yes.
in TDCC, and it's always interesting and informative. May I share my screen for the
Sure.
announcement of TDCC? Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vila.
We would like to take this chance to share with you some updates from TDCC.
Welcome to TDCC Abu Dhabi. Opening soon in September, the Early Intervention Program at the Developing Child Center in Abu Dhabi is dedicated to meeting the unique needs of children aged 3 to 8 years old. Our program seamlessly integrates educational learning with therapeutic strategies to address each child's individual developmental needs. By fostering each child's strengths and addressing any areas of difficulty, we aim to bridge developmental gaps and support their journey towards achieving their full potential. Everyone is welcome.
Caregiver Training. This program focuses on developing knowledge, skills, and values necessary to provide quality care for children of determination. The training will cover topics such as the basic needs of the child, communication strategies, understanding behavior and sensory needs, social and play skills, and fostering independence and home routines. This is facilitated by experienced and committed educators in the Inclusive Education Services led by Amina Shazib, psychologist and head of Inclusive Education Services.
Admission for academic year 2024 to 2025 is still open for children aged 4 to 14 years old. This is a unique program integrating both educational learning and therapeutic strategies designed for children with learning difficulties. We provide early intervention programs, preschool intervention, life skills, and school readiness program.
Eating therapy. This therapy session helps children who are struggling to eat. Our therapists provide evidence-based approaches on how to make mealtime enjoyable that would eventually end mealtime struggle. Spot therapy combines speech-language and occupational therapy for children, offering enhanced attention, improved social skills, integrated language, and communication development to children, and consistent support for parents and caregivers. Sensory integration therapy. This is an evidence-based approach that benefits children beyond autism.
Our therapists create a sensory-rich environment using specialized equipment. This therapy focuses on developing a strong sensory system, which is crucial for motor skills, executive functions, and behavior. Affirmative listening therapy. This is a transformative auditory training therapy available for children and young adults. This therapy listening method has been proven effective in enhancing attention skills and communication abilities. Neurofeedback therapy. At TDCC, we specialize in neurofeedback therapy for children and young adults. It promotes mental well-being in young individuals with anxiety, depression, ADHD, and many more. Visual perception therapy. In this therapy, children improve their visual processing skills through specialized activities and exercises. It enhances visual discrimination, tracking, and spatial awareness, leading to improved academic performance and coordination. This is tailored to each child's needs. It promotes independence and success in daily life. Spider cage therapy. This is a transformative intervention for children designed to address motor challenges and sensory integration difficulties. This therapy optimizes motor skills, coordination, balance, and sensory processing to foster the overall development of children. Our handwriting program is available in Arabic, English, and French. Children who are struggling to write legibly can benefit from this program. TDCC is home to highly skilled dyslexia and literacy specialists who conduct personalized assessments to identify specific challenges individuals face with reading, writing, and spelling. We use evidence-based strategies and interventions and develop tailored plans to improve phonological awareness, decoding skills, and spelling abilities. Flourishing and leadership for the youth. This is a resilience-based program designed and delivered by a social behavior counseling expert, Kipa Shrestha, for children aged 7-12 years old. The FLY children will learn positive self-talk, mindfulness practices, and gratitude practices. By the end of the 5-week workshop, they will have developed the necessary skills and character traits to face challenges with resilience and lead a flourishing life. Educational psychology. Our expert psychologists provide educational assessments and schools observations using evidence-based tools and strategies to help parents and schools make informed decisions about the students' education. Counseling services. At TDCC, our psychologists incorporate proven cognitive-based therapy and practical strategies and solutions to support children, adolescents, and their families to meet family objectives. Parenting services. The parenting services focus on specific challenges related to child development, behavior management, and communication. It empowers parents and caregivers with the tools in helping children achieve a happy, healthy, and well-adjusted life.
TDCC offers the Aerosmith program and is now accepting reservations. Contact TDCC for more information. Register for our upcoming webinar, Understanding and Supporting Children and Teens with Stuttering, a Guide for Parents and Teachers, presented by Joa Figali, speech and language therapist. Joa will explore key topics including understanding stuttering, myths versus facts, how parents and teachers can support children with stuttering, and empowering teens.
If interested in any of these programs, please contact us. Have a screenshot with our contact details. You can also share this to your friends and to anyone who needs support. Thank you for joining us today. For updates of the next webinar, training, and services, please scan these core codes. Follow us on social media. Visit our website for more information and booking of appointments.
Could you take a minute to give TDCC and the speaker a 5-star rating on Google Reviews? Please scan the QR codes on your screen. Thank you, everyone.